Hello, everyone. We are here with José Huertas, Mash, and myself from Codurance. We decided to do this Fireside Chat series. So basically, the idea came because the three of us, we have loads of conversations. Not only the three of us, but a lot of people inside Codurance. We have loads of different conversations among ourselves that we found that could be interesting if we actually recorded them. But the idea is not to have anything, let's say, scripted. So we just picked a topic like literally 30 seconds before we started this recording. And we're going to talk about it as we normally do in our evenings when we are finishing our work and we have a drink and we just talk about stuff. So today we picked the topic that is career progression. So yeah, so let's start talking and see what happens, right? That's the idea. So maybe we could, for example, if we say like how do we see our careers moving from we started and not telling our history, but like how do we see our progression?
Exactly, right? Because career progression is not it's something that sounds pretty formal, like like institutionalized kind of thing. Like you have to go through these steps and so on. But I personally haven't thought about it that way, right? I just felt like I wanted to do certain things, and if I have the context to do them, I would, I don't know, stay with the company or try to move into the areas that I wanted to work on and so on. But never really had like, oh, this is the sequence of steps or whatever. I just followed what was kind of driving me, and that's how I've gone through lots of things, right? Like not only I started in software development, but I've done lots of other areas, right? Like transformation and team coaching and so on, right? And all of those things in the end have helped me everywhere, right? Like wherever I go, like if I having to deal with something technical, there's a lot from those other aspects that I can bring into things, no? And it helps me, right? Because we all know writing software is a communication problem, no? It's understanding what the client wants, trying to work what the solution is with the team, try to tell the computer what to do. So overall, I've never thought about it in a very structured way. It's been more of a follow your passion kind of a thing, but it ended up working well for me, I think. I don't know, Mash, what do you think?
It's funny you should say that because like I've heard Sandro talk about his career and and how he kind of relayed that in his book as well. And I've always thought, I wish I had that kind of level of, I don't know, maturity at an early age in my life. For me, my career has been more serendipity, but I have been thinking a bit uh, about it. I mean, it's a case of like, I did computer science because I liked it. It wasn't the subject that I was the best at, by the way, but it was kind of just, you know, of the ones that I was good at, this one seemed to have some more of a kind of applicability for a job when I first kind of chose that as a degree. And then later on, as I said, the reason I say serendipity is that I didn't really think about my career as, oh, I want to do this and I want to get better at this and I want to get better at this. When I started working, I just certain things would interest me and opportunities would come. And if thinking back on it, I think one thing that I would tell myself to keep doing is that I always looked at different experiences. So I was always attracted towards something that was different to what I'm currently doing. So any other task or any other little bit of role or any other work that was slightly more different from what I've been currently been doing, I would be attracted to it and I'd go to it. And even when I was at the consultancy that Sandro and I were at, I was quite known for like if no one else wants to do something, just give it to
Yeah,
Mash
that's
because if
good.
it's any different, he will definitely want to do it. And I think maybe that kind of thing got me to where I am, but I definitely didn't have a plan or any kind of strong passion for anything in particular. I know it sounds a bit underwhelming.
And they say it didn't change, right? We are still this way today. Oh, if you don't know, give it to Mash. Mash will get that sorted, right? We still do that today at Codurance. Just throw everything at you. So, yeah, you know what? Give it to Mash. I was, yeah, as you were saying, I was more structured. It's difficult for me to say exactly why, but I wrote, as you said, Mesh, I wrote extensively about that and gave talks about those things. So I was always had those drives. I wanted to do certain things. I was creating my plans, and I planned very carefully my entire life since I was like 14, 15 until very recently. Of course, I adapt and stuff, but I always had where I am, where I want to go, and I was reacting. But there was, it's funny that now that when I look back, there was a financial situation involved as well. So now, for example, I'm in a very different position than I was, right? So, for example, the financial pressure that I had growing up also made me be more structured. If I wanted to achieve certain things, if I wanted to live abroad, if I wanted to have certain types of career, I would need to do certain things on my own, and for that I needed to be very disciplined. Of course, that if you remove, for example, if I don't know, a very close friend of mine from Brazil was saying, like, if you didn't have the financial pressure you had, you would have had a very different career, or you would have made different choices. So I became less driven. Not less driven is not the word, but like I don't plan as much as I used to do in the early days of my career. Today, I'm more like, as you said, like I let it go a bit and explore more opportunities. Before I was very focused. So, yeah.
There's one thing that makes me, and when we mention the word career, right? What does it actually mean? Because I've just been writing it down, like, you know, if you talk about, like, they talk about career ladder, right? So you're moving up some kind of a career ladder, right? But I think it's, you are progressing in a certain dimension, or you are progressing in multiple dimensions. And if we try to look at those dimensions in a more general way, I mean, I've got financial, you talked about, right? You want more and more money, right? You've got authority, right? You want more and more power, right? Or position. You want to be in positions where you are doing things that you maybe like more and more, or is kind of related to authority as well, but it also may be related to autonomy as well, right? Maybe there is an element of knowledge, the mastery part. Maybe that's also another ladder that you're moving up this ladder of knowledge. Within that there are many dimensions of knowledge as well. But maybe these are four that I can come up with just now, but maybe there are many other dimensions as well. And
So what are they again,
when you
Nash?
talk about
Sorry,
career,
what are they again? You
which
said
dimension you
financial?
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Financial, authority,
Power.
position, yeah, authority, power, same thing, and knowledge, I would say, or skill. Knowledge and skill, I guess, the same thing. Similar subject. Right?
Now that you're saying that, like, that's been kind of my drive, and I feel like there's a bit of the idea of, when you're just starting with something, like your ability to absorb that knowledge, like you learn a lot in very little time, and then at some point it starts kind of plateauing, and you need to invest a lot more effort in order to continue growing in that area and so on, right? And I think that has had a big impact in the way that I approach this, because mastery has been my drive in particular, right? So it starts with, I want to be really good, at least for me, it started as, I want to be really good at this technology, right, or this methodology, or right, and then you realize that what you can do, for instance, in software development and so on, is like what you can do as an individual is kind of limited, right? If you want to do bigger things, you need to you need a group, you need a team, right? And then what makes a team be effective? So I started, looking into that. Now, it was no longer about how many technologies you know or how well you know a specific stack, but how are you able to transfer that knowledge? How are you able to get other people to collaborate and to work together to build something in an effective way? No, then it expanded even more, right? Because sometimes I saw that we were building things that the client didn't want, and so we thought it was a success. Oh, we delivered on time, we did all these things, but it was not really solving a problem. So you start looking out of that scope, right, and try to understand what the business wants to do. What are the constraints? Like, how can you achieve a solution that fits that? So you start getting into consulting and into understanding and into lean startup and UX and understanding the customer and so on. And then you realize, okay, this is all working within an organization, right? And there are other teams and there are other clients. All these things are interacting. So how can you bring about change to actually push things to a more, let's say, to a better way of working? And then you start looking into transformation and agile and culture and all of these. So this is a bit the journey that I went through, right? And it was guided by, okay, a topic that I needed to get better at, learning a lot about it and trying to apply it as you're doing things then, and moving, finding the next blocker and trying to better yourself in order to
there are quite a few things that I would like to
deal
unpick,
with that,
because there is a lot of
right?
stuff that you mentioned that I would like you to talk about, and there are a few other things that I would like to bring as well. But so you mentioned that one of your main drivers was mastery. Although I also mentioned that I had some financial pressures, but the financial pressures just made me be more structured in how I went about my career and defining better the sequence of steps, and really forced me to think very carefully what I want to achieve and how I would do that. But the real driver, because I could have done that in many different ways, because, for example, the solution for a financial problem is money. So I could have based my entire career on how do I get more money. And that was not the driver. The financial pressure was just just an added constraint that I had. But you mentioned mastery as your main driver, which was certainly for me the main driver as well. But given your experience, as you said that you were going for different things, do you think that at some point, following the autonomy, mastery, and purpose, or for example, do you think that mastery became less of the driver and other things became more of a driver, and when you started going much broader, or mastery was still the main driver?
I think mastery has always been there. It's just as part of that, I chose specific, let's call them projects. Like, for instance, when I started Social Funding, which was the first company I started, the idea was to build something. I basically played the role of a CDO. I outsourced work to teams in other countries. They did a lot of stuff right around that area, and for me, that was a project. That was a great way of understanding how a business ran, understanding what kind of trade-offs you need to do at that level, and so on. Right, like getting that exposure. When that project finished, I had other projects, and then Smoking Brains came along, and so on. So it always it was always there. The mastery was always there, but it was guided by the, let's say, the building something, right? Like by that creative kind of. I'm lacking the exact words right now to describe, but that sense of building and contributing, and you can call it purpose to some extent. No, it's like your child, or
you said,
and that drives the engagement as well.
This is
like the knowledge and the position and stuff, and I wonder how much of this plays a part as well as you.
Yeah, I want to unpick what Jose said about mastery. I personally don't think, knowing you, I personally don't think you go for mastery, because I was just like thinking about like what would be my driver, and I'll tell you why I don't think you go for mastery. Because to me, and I mean maybe that's why I look at it, mastery is a skill set that is quite cohesive, and you are constantly doing it to get better and better and better at it, right? So it's not like it's not moving from one skill set to next skill set, dabbling, trying to get something to, and I've got a point here, right? But but it's actually mastery is more about almost obsession with something, with a skill that you are looking to kind of hone over and over and over and again. It's about specialisms to some extent. Maybe there is mastery on the breadth as well, but you go for the breadth a lot more than you go for the depth. At least that's how I've seen it. Like even recently, I've been quite impressed with, you're looking at AI and data science and those kind of things, and you've gone into it fairly deep. But I won't call it mastery. But you've got a good working understanding, much better than me. But you've just gone into it, and you go into the other things now. And these are the things that you're like, even as you said, even the things around I don't know, organizational or cultures and all those things. And I think you get to a good level and maybe expert level, but is it really mastery in any particular one of those, or is the combinatorial effect allows you to do, and wait for it, and this I think is personally my driver is invention and impact. That's what I went for. Invention, that's what really gets me going, because if I'm onto something, kind of discovering something new, or something that is novel, not necessarily new but novel, and impact, will it drive an impact into something? Am I having some kind of an impact? And that also drives me. And so
Okay.
maybe in light of that, what do you have to say?
Yeah, exactly. So for me, I understand what you mean, right? So it can be seen as that, as mastery within one, narrow the focus, right, and kind of get better at one thing. But it really depends on what that thing is, right? And for me, this is why I'm combining it with what I was mentioned before as having some sort of project, like running a company. If you ask me, it's about mastery about running a company, and in many cases it's about mastery about getting a great team to work. It's not so much about, it initially was about the technology, and it initially was about, I don't know, .NET, which was one of my pet stacks, and that kind of stuff. And I did a lot of stuff there. And then I moved. I don't know. I did PHP, and I got really good at PHP. But then I started, doing technical coaching, and then it changed, right? So for me, it's a matter of that target, like what you consider to be the thing that you're trying to master, and in many cases that will require for you to build up different skills, right? And I'll give you an example. Now you mentioned machine learning, data science, and so on. Well, it's part of the job. It's like, what is it that I need now in order to, have better conversations and understand what customers need, to, talk to the team and try to convey an idea or help them or try to solve problems. And it's also something that fascinates me, because there is this, continuous learning aspect of it, which, fills me with a warm
you're
feeling
enjoying
inside.
the ride. You're
Exactly.
enjoying,
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. No, it's
but I
not
wouldn't
a
call it
choice.
mastery though.
driver.
It's not mastering the company. What you're
different
trying to
drive.
do is achieving, right? It's achievement,
Yeah,
and that's what I meant by
this
impact.
is what I was thinking, because I think that among the three of
invention,
us, I'm probably
that's a different driver.
the one
That's
with
not mastery.
how can I say, less breadth. But I went from mastery. So I drove my career through mastery. And the difference, for example, when I look at the two of you, but mainly Jose, maybe, because, but like I limited myself. So using really mastery as a driver, at least the way I see mastery, I made conscious decisions of not learning certain things because I didn't want to deviate from the path that I was in. And I only deviated, I only started adding more things to my, let's say, skill set when I really felt that either I was bored, or I really felt that I reached the level, the whole Pareto's law, that I reached like 80% of that knowledge, and to get to the 100% would take like the rest of my life. Maybe like I still went ahead in that direction, and at some point I stopped, but like I went really deep in very, very few subjects, and I stayed there for a long, long time. I diversified a little bit more after we started Codurance. Maybe a little bit earlier, but because then my job, then the driver changed for me. Instead of being a master very few disciplines, I had that sense of achievement. I think that's where Mash was coming from, because I wanted to be an overachiever. So that achieving and making an impact was also a driver for me. But I used that within the narrow focus that I chose in my career to make an impact within that narrow focus. And then I just widened. I kept the making an impact. That's what we are doing. This is what we need to do for the job that we have now. And but for example, the mastery side is not the main driver for my career anymore, but it was at the beginning. Yeah.
Interesting, eh? But Jose, what do you think?
No, I still think it's another aspect. There is this sense of, I mean, they're combined. No, there is an area around purpose, no, and what it is that you're doing things for, right? Which is, I think, what you're referring to as you know, having that impact and so on. And then there is I think mastery also, or an element of mastery, the continuous improvement or betterment of yourself. Yeah, independently of whether it's a narrow focus or not. I think that aspect of mastery is definitely there in how I've approached things. No, the reality is that, you know, a lot of the times, in order to accomplish things and in order to you know, get results and so on, you don't need to get to that level of, you know, years and years of experience within one particular topic, right? And that idea of understanding how things work together and how they affect each other becomes a lot more important when you're dealing with complex things, right? Like it's not just, you know, some input output. You know, you need to, when there are more variables that you, in many cases, you can't control, and you can, that understanding, you know, the relationships between those things and being able to get good enough, because getting better and you know, getting that 100% mastery of something is not really going to make a lot of difference when, you know, it's a very complex system that is not just that skill and everything else is working. So that's what I think, right? Like I understand the point. Yes, from that point of view, I would say earlier in my career it was more about the skill set. This is why, you know, TDD and software craftsmanship, and, you know, we started the community, and that it was that betterment and that getting better at the skill and the craft of, you know, building well-crafted software, right? But then that definition of building well-crafted software started expanding, and then, you know, the tool set that you need is really, really, really big, right? It's not, you can't become a master in every single one of the skills that you need.
No,
right?
so you
need to start also prioritizing that.
I had to diversify or to build a bigger breadth of things to do my job, but I was happy to do that because the driver became different. The driver became, look, you are running a company now, you need to be successful. So in order to do your job now and to be successful, and you need to start understanding about things that I never wanted to understand before, like marketing and sales and customer satisfaction and stuff like that. This is another thing. While we were talking, I was taking a few notes. For example, when I started my career, I was extremely selfish. I was focusing on doing what I wanted to do and what was best for me. Well, I would choose job according to the things that I wanted to learn. So it took me years, probably more than a decade, until I switched my mind to say, yes, I need to learn things, and I'll always keep that mastery thing going. But then I need to satisfy my employers, my clients and stuff. But it took me a long time to actually start thinking like that. And this became far more apparent when I joined a consultancy company. Now we run one, of course, but serious. So my mind was changing, my focus was changing given what I was doing.
I think this is an important, and maybe we need another session. I think one on craftsmanship and one on mastery separately, because there's a lot to unpick in mastery. But like to kind of bring mastery back into the frame of career, right? Because we were talking about this, and kind of like picking on exactly what you said, Sandro. There is an element of self-absorption in attaining skill, right? Like if you are trying to attain certain kind of skill, like being able to really test drive code really well, and have a really good flow in your development and that kind of stuff, there is an element of absorption, and we see that. We definitely had it when we were younger. Which makes me sound like really old now. Is it? I didn't want to say that.
A bit, yeah.
But there is yeah, exactly. There is an element of self-absorption, and you don't really, you almost think like you take the career as if like as your right, because you are building up these skills, right? And this is the other thing that I always talk to when we talk about performance reviews and so on, right? And the dichotomy of skill versus performance, right? Just because you are skilled does not mean you perform well. Skill is a basis of maybe performing well, but in the beginning, when we are trying to kind of building up our career, we are obsessed with skill, right? And maybe it is the right level, right kind of thing to concentrate on, because you do need a level of obsession to kind of really do this repetitive thing over and over again when your margins of improvements are so minute on each iteration.
I would like to say something like at the beginning of our conversation. I think that Mash, you mentioned, you asked like almost a rhetorical question, like what is a career or something. But we I want to go back because I took some notes. I thought deeply about those things in the past, even when I was writing the book and stuff. So what is the difference between a career? So career, profession, and a job, right? And that distinction have always been extremely clear to me. Because having that distinction between career, job, and profession really helps, at least helped me to plan my life. So for instance, the way that I define those things is, let's start with job and profession first. So for me, a job is a thing that you do, is a thing that is temporary, right? So I knew that I would be joining companies. I would take my time in those companies. I would learn what I wanted to learn. I would be exposed to the experience that I wanted to be exposed. In certain companies, I chose carefully. I chose very carefully all the jobs that I had, and I aligned them to where I was going. So given where I wanted to go, I chose the companies that had the potential to take me further in the journey that I wanted to go. So those were jobs. This journey is the career. But then it's the profession. So the profession is, for me, when I was thinking about it, is something far deeper. So, like that dichotomy that we see people saying, oh, my personal life and my professional life. That dichotomy is harmful, in my view. Because when you divide our lives into two, we are one, personal life and my professional life, we are creating an impossible division that make us feel bad constantly. If we spend more time in our professional side, we feel we blame ourselves that we are sacrificing our personal side. If we spend more time in the personal side, we feel guilty that we are not spending enough time to work on our careers or whatever that is. But if you think about a profession as something that is part of who you are, right? So it's a difference to say, when someone asks you, what do you do? Oh, I'm a Java, so I don't know, I work for a company X, or I program in Java. So it's different from saying like, I'm a software professional, or I'm a software developer or I'm a consultant. Because when you say I am something, you start incorporating as part of who you are. So that dichotomy, you don't feel that guilty. And for me, a profession is part of you. When you see something, I feel less guilty doing one thing or the other because I don't divide them. I mean, my career is just the combination, is the accumulation of experiences that I had during my time, my working. This is how I see that.
I think it's a good way. I mean, in terms of, there is, like in Habits of Highly Effective People, I think there is I don't know, it's been a while, but it talks about integrity, when you are integrated, right? So that's how he mentions, like, integrity is when you are integrated, and when your professional identity or what you do as a job and so on, and what you are in other kind of facets of your life, when those things are well integrated, then of course it makes for a more, let's say, harmonious life, right? So I completely agree with that. But there is this kind of I've lost my train of thought now. Because there was something
I'm sure it was extremely profound.
I had a very good point. I just went down one route and kind of forgot what the really point was going to be. Okay,
but
go
I
ahead,
was saying, like, for example,
and then I'll come back.
I'm a lawyer,
No,
I'm a doctor.
let me.
So they incorporate that as part of who they are. See what I'm saying?
Okay, so I'll jump in and pick that up. Yeah, so you're talking about that separation, right? Of who, the job that you do, or the professional career development and the personal side of things, right? And one question that I would have, and could be the cause in many cases for this, is that are you your job? Yeah, let's say I'm gonna move out of the software industry, or let's stick in the software industry. Let's say that you're building software that will, I don't know, kill people. Yeah, to give an example.
That's a very nice example, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna. Well, it is. It could be a reality. I'm sure for someone out there, they are building.
Oh, sure, but you don't need to move out of the software industry for that. You can change job.
Exactly. So let's say you're building software, and that eventually will have a bad outcome. Does that make you, a bad person, or you know what I mean? Like, because I see that separation when there is a clash, or a dissonance, between how you see yourself as a person and the things that you want to do, and what you're doing professionally. At least this is my, view on how.
Well,
that could
I
happen,
think,
right?
I mean, this is that's like an age-old discussion, isn't it? Like Hannah Arendt talked about that guy who was, the Nazi guy who was basically, all he was doing was the logistics, and he was unrepentant till the very end because he said, it's just my job. But like that's a very all kind of,
because if he says I am, or I'm, then it's a different thing, and this is what I'm trying to get at.
But maybe he should have said I am, and it would have made him think. Same as was the guy who invented the atom bomb, who was then later on very, he regretted it to some level but the obsession with doing the job versus the integrity of being a human being.
Of the whole thing, exactly.
Yeah, and if you compartmentalize, it's a problem.
It's easier. Well, it's a problem in a sense that you lose that other aspect of things. Yeah, but from the point of view of the person, it allows you to do the job better.
Well, I'm not sure if it's true. I'm not sure if it's true. So is it that true? Because, like, I'm not sure if there is a correlation in there. Of doing the job better. I think that some people can compartmentalize and others don't. I think that it's very difficult for you to achieve mastery when you create that division. Like, for example, I find it's very difficult for you to dedicate time without feeling guilty, because this is important, because it's the quality of the time that you dedicate, right? So to achieve mastery. Because if you are chasing mastery, you need to incorporate that to who you are, because it will make it, because like it will make your life very difficult.
You need to live
Exactly.
it. No, you need
Of
to
course you do.
the effort, no, and
But
the
this
and
can be,
the
this is actually can be very unhealthy because your obsession has to be tempered with something, right? Because you can, if you are too, like obsession can lead you, like for mastery, can lead you to a very unhealthy situation where you have no balance, right? And I think originally when you talked about, bringing your profession as part of your identity, it actually integrates it with the rest of your life so you can achieve a good level of balance
But
because
I don't think that this is, for me, it might be a false dichotomy, because like balance and obsession is a slightly false. It's not the true dichotomy here. So what I'm trying to say is, for example, a very common question that we get, mainly in the craftsmanship world: how much time should I dedicate to my career? Right. So, for example, some prominent figures in our industry will say you need to dedicate 20 hours a week, right? So, and people ask me like, how do you achieve balance? So, for example, I cannot do that. I cannot put that pressure on myself and say, look, I'm going to work 8 hours a day, and then on top of that, I'm going to dedicate, let's say, another X number of hours per day or per week, so that I invest in my career, and then I time box that, and then the rest is with my kids or my family. This would drive me nuts. So, and the
no,
reason
I
that
agree.
people try to do is because they are still trying to separate the two lives. So, for example, I feel guilty when I go on a Netflix spree, and I spend like 2 weeks just binge watching whatever series that I want, or watching my NBA games, as I'm going to do tonight, because the playoffs just started. So I have zero guilty. Like when I just put like an NBA game and spend like a full week just watching basketball, and then for the next week or in 2 weeks' time, I will just be reading a technical book. See what I'm saying? For me, it's far more natural,
No, no, I
that
totally
balance.
understand, but I think my view, yeah, so like the word is imprecise, I guess. Balance can mean a seesaw thing, you give and take.
But I don't
Here,
think
a
about. But
constant
I
kind
think
of
that
give
what
and
I'm trying to
take.
say is that when you don't even
No, no,
think about balancing something.
no, no, you don't. No, no, you don't. And I'm not saying that you think about balance. I'm not saying that you think about doing this and that and that and that. Actually, an integrated life, or maybe harmony is
Okay.
a better word, is that you're, and that's what I mean by balance, is that it doesn't mean that, you kind of compartmentalize and this is how much time I'm going to spend on various things. What it basically means is that there's ebbs and flows in different aspects of your life, right? And they, in general, you concentrate on certain things that make sense, and other things that make sense at a different time, and so on. So you kind of in this ebb and flow, but holistically, that you have balance, that you because it's things are integrated, that your profession is as important to you and as much a part of you as the rest of your life, and you kind of create this natural harmony amongst them as you go along. You don't plan it so much, you
but
just
But
allow
that's a
balance
it to
still
very
happen, basically.
implies
that's a very
one thing over the other, and this is what I'm trying to remove.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's the wrong metaphor, wrong word, I'd say. Then if that's how it's not one or the other, but rather kind of
Yeah.
more of a kind of a harmonious, integrated life, right?
and it's also very different from person to person, right? Like it would what harmony means for you, no, in your professional and personal life, it may be very different for someone
Exactly,
else, right? And what
exactly.
you find a lot of the time is people applying their standards of harmony is
Exactly.
to everyone else's. Like it
Yeah,
should be like this, and that is, I think, also a problem, right?
yeah.
Because for one, you're judging others, no, and that's not, but also, what works for you may not work for other people, and they may listen to you and think that that's the way to
That's
do,
the way it
and
should be. Yeah, yeah.
exactly, and try to follow on that, no. So
Hmm.
again, you need to dedicate 20 hours a week to your career. Well, maybe you need to dedicate less.
Exactly.
Maybe you know what I mean, like it's not.
And also, it depends on what you want to do. Like, coming back to what you were talking about, like, a lot of the times, there was a time in my life where I spent my nights, playing with different versions of Linux Slackware. And to me, that was fun. Although it was actually preparing me for a job, and I could say, okay, I'm spending a lot of time in my profession, but actually, it was part of my life. That's what I wanted to do at the time, and it was bringing me joy. And I think that's what I mean, that and it's a very good point, Jose, that it's like, how you kind of see harmony in your life and what brings you joy, uh, is different for everybody. And it could be actual work that brings you joy at a particular time, and the same work may not bring you joy at a different time, right? And that's fine. You adjust your life accordingly, rather than creating these expectations on yourself that, shit, I need to spend 20 hours a week,
Yeah, it never
doing
worked for me
TDD
because like
cartons.
I already have a lot of pressure at work to deliver shit and do stuff. The last thing I want to do is that when I finish my working hours is to put an extra pressure on me to make something that was supposed to be a pleasure to be a chore, you know. So for me,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
That
So
I
for
have
me,
to spend
like
time
if you
doing
are
it
going
now.
on
Yeah.
YouTube, you watch one video that is about comedy, the other one is about a technical session, the other one is about whatever else. And see what I'm saying? For me, it's just like things that I like doing, and everything that I do
Mm.
should give me pleasure. If it's not giving me pleasure, it's for me, given where I am now, it's not worth doing.
And this is another aspect of it, which is let's call it emotional intelligence, right? Or self knowledge, or knowledge of oneself. No, like what are the things that bring me, pleasure, or make me feel good, or no, this kind of stuff. And a lot of people don't really sit down and think about this, which is, I think, a very important aspect of, if you want to plan your career, if you want to, no, if you want to, if you're in pursuit of happiness, so to speak, no, understanding what that looks like, no, and it's something, for instance, that I found out early in my career, like, I was on the line of, more power, money, and so on. That's what success means, right? And I remember reading, what's it called? Yeah, Never Eat Alone. And I think that in that book, the guy has a chapter where he talks about how the shirts that he bought were super expensive, but they were losing like the buttons and stuff. And he makes a whole reflection. I don't remember if this is exactly the book. I think it is, but he was making this reflection about what success actually meant and how that changed. And that was a reflection that really, stuck with me, because I realized that, and this is the kind of hamster wheel that a lot of people find themselves in, like getting money, investing more time to do, to work so that they can get money, then never actually get to enjoy the results of having that money, like holidays with your family or whatever, spending time with your spouse and so on, right? So that aspect of knowing exactly what that means for you, and a lot of the times it's not really about money, right? A lot of the time it's about how you feel about what you're doing, and that purpose and so on, right? And it's something that a lot of people are not, they see their jobs as, this is something that gets me the money that I need in order to then go and do the things that I
And
want
it's a
to
shame
do,
because
right?
we are
Like the
so
hobby
fortunate,
or the.
because this is the thing that I
would
always
you-
say. Like I was even discussing with Steve earlier on. We sometimes forget about how fortunate we are in our industry, because the average salary for a developer is normally quite above the average of salaries of any country, right? So developer or a mid-level developer is paid far more than the average salary of the entire country, which means that, for example, that financial pressure,
Yeah.
we most developers, once they are in that path, mainly in the developed world, that financial pressure is removed from us. So it's not that difficult, let's say, to shape our career in a way that you can combine a good standard of living with things that give you pleasure, right?
Mhm. But there is another element, right? And I find that in our industry, at least the people that I get to speak to, the pursuit of wealth
Mm-hmm.
let's say, or money is not as big I mean, I'm sure there are people, but it's not as big. And even the pursuit of authority or position is not as prevalent. But what I see is that there's this undue pressure on achievement of sort, achievement in knowledge, in
Which is still more related to
kind of
mastery.
experiences, right? So they, yeah, but it is related to us, but they put so much pressure on themselves to say, okay, I'm here, I need to be here now, I need to be a team lead, I need to be kind of know this stack, I need to be have all these cloud offerings under my belt, I need to have experience in these 2 or 3 different languages and so on. And this is a lot of
Pressure.
expectations so early on, and they're almost in a hurry to move through that, right? It almost seems they can't wait, rather than actually enjoying the journey. Like, I was speaking to Akbar the other day, and I was saying, like, what happened to, like, you know rather than saying I need to be there and I need to be there, what happened to just, like, enjoying the experience, gathering experiences. Like, I'm gonna gather experiences, not because I want to be there, but because actually it brings me joy to have these different experiences, and I don't have to be to kind of force myself to say I need to have these experiences by this time, and I need to have moved
It's the
beyond
wrong
this level
driver,
by this
right? In a
time,
way,
right?
almost.
Yeah, yeah, it's almost undue pressure. I don't know where it's coming from. Is that it's almost like people are younger and younger nowadays and put more and more pressure on themselves to be at certain level in their career at a much earlier,
Jose, I think you want to
let's
mute.
say, age, right? Sorry, Jose, you're
Yeah, for me, it goes back to that idea of knowing what it is that actually brings you joy, so to speak. Know what is it that you're looking for, and a lot of times you set a goal, but you don't know that's not what you want until you get there, right? So a lot of people think it's the money, and they go and try to, and once they have that, they realize that okay, that's not. It's a bit the hierarchy of needs, no, and
Maslow's.
Maslow's pyramid, no, of needs. Once you've got those things in place, right, you start realizing that there are other areas, no, that are also important, right?
There is just two things that I would like to pick up on. There is you were saying, Mash, enjoying the experience that you were having, and I think that every time I thought about that, this was related to the group of people that I was working with. And then the other topic would be when I started moving not away necessarily from mastery, but when autonomy became more important. And maybe this is even a better topic for us to discuss, because, for example, as I was going through mastery, I was focusing on my individual skills and the path that I want to follow. But one thing that frustrated me over time was that I realized that I didn't have control of decisions that impacted me. So then my drivers started to change from mastery to autonomy, because I would start being part of the decisions, right? But that opened up as that became. I'm not saying that is like I gave up in one and replaced with the other. It's just like I was putting more emphasis on getting more autonomy, let's say. So, but that changed my focus, because then I started pushing myself to be involved in certain positions, in certain discussions. I realized that I didn't have the depth to be part of certain groups. I always say that to people. For example, everyone wants to be part of certain groups. So I have a long talk about that. But for example, I was asking myself, this was a thing that really changed in my head. I knew that I wanted to be part of certain groups that were the decision-making groups. But it was a very naive thought. Of course I wanted to be part of that group. But I was failing. And the reason that I was failing is because I failed to understand what I would bring to that group. So why would that group accept me in a way? See what I'm saying? So it took me also a while to say, if I want to be part of a decision-making group, what do I bring to the table? And that forced me to start expanding my skill sets to different directions so that I could contribute to the discussions where decisions would be made. But that changed the focus.
I think
I don't know what you guys think about it.
It's very interesting. I mean, it makes complete sense. I'm just trying to see if that was the path that I followed, because, like, one thing that I often did was, I don't know, consciously and subconsciously, I did move up the ladder fairly quickly, both in the consultancy and then in the investment bank and so on. I kind of always had the knack of moving up the ladder, and I don't know if that was what the driver there was. Jose earlier mentioned Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There is this whole one thing is to be in certain circles because you want to have certain kind of to be able to make certain kind of decisions, and there is then this other thing about sociological needs in the Maslow's hierarchy. I think that's how it's pronounced anyway. But there, where you want to be in certain groups because there is a social kudos to those groups as well. And I'm still not 100% sure why I moved up the ladders quickly. I think one thing that I did do, and maybe this is another thing that we should be discussing in the career, because if you're thinking about certain aspects of, like, it's not just about having the right skills to bring something into certain groups. It's also about relationships, right? And I think this is one area that I did well, is that I established, not in a kind of a manipulative way. It's, I think, kind of just because that's the way I worked and that's the way I related to people, is kind of close bonds with people. And often not just the people that I worked with within the teams, but also other people, my people at kind of a higher level, people kind of in different departments and those kind of things, closer social bonds. I always got on with some people really well. I mean, Sandro, we kind of maintained that bond, and maybe that was because I'm trying to kind of understand the reasoning on why I moved up these ladders and into these different groups. And I think that need for forming or wanting to form closer bonds also helped, and it's probably another area that we should look at when we are talking about career, right? Is that
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like we've been side by side in our careers for what now? If I've been here for 17 years, so 15 years. For 15 years, we've been going side by side. And what I can say is what you said before. For example, you had much earlier than me a bigger sense of creating an impact, right? For example, you were more focused on the job. For example, I'm here to do a job, and I want to make a big impact. So then you were making the connections, and then you would position yourself in places that you would make a bigger impact. It was slightly different from the drive that I had. I didn't want to be impacted by this. I wanted to do things my way. I wanted to drive things. It was different. Mine was more selfish in a way. See what I'm saying? I think that you had a much earlier. Today we are very similar, but like earlier on, you already had a much bigger perspective in terms of, look, I need to provide value here. I need to create an impact. I need to do what is right for my employer and clients when we were in consultancy. Me was more like, this is what I would like me and my team to do, and there are all those external decisions that drives me nuts, or I see all these inefficiencies that I cannot impact. And I want to be there and say, hey, I think this is all shit, and I want to do that in a different way.
That reminds me of a few discussions in the old days, at least.
Right, but I was coming short because I was trying to bulldoze myself into meetings, and they would just easily beat my arguments down because I had no foundation. I was just coming and we want to do TDD, and without really understanding the business side. So, but that after so many failures in trying to achieve what I wanted I had to expand my mind. I had to open my mind and say, look, dude, you cannot just be the guy that can write some code and test drive stuff. You need to understand more. But it was a different driver, I guess, from yours maybe.
It's similar. I would say it's similar to what I went through. When I was explaining before, you get really good at something, then how does the team get the whole thing gets better, and then how do we know that we're building the right thing? And so for me, it was a bit in that direction. I was not trying to. I came at it from a perspective more of curiosity. Like, okay, so what is this? Now, like, what's happening here? Like, what is that I'm not seeing? What do I need? Where's the gap? What is the more than I want to be. I just wanted things to work, right? I just wanted things to just to be successful doing what we were doing, right? And that was kind of it's a different. If a different approach, let's say, but very much similar in the in the context now in which that was happening. Now, in my case, it was we ended up delivering stuff that was not what the client wanted to know, and then we put a lot of effort and but the result was crap, because in the end it was not what was needed, right, and so on. So yeah, from that perspective, I see lots of similarities there.
But one thing I have to say, and I was saying this to Akbar today actually, Jose, is that you're almost, because it's your birthday, happy birthday, but it's and I was saying like Jose is, because that's where I don't like I thought I'd plug your birthday in. I have said happy birthday.
We had to get the exactly. We had to publish the whole world, put it live just to piss him off.
So like Sandro and I are, we're almost 10 years older than you, but where you are, like I personally was not where you are right now at your age, and there is maybe in that career maturity, or whether you call it that, I don't know, whatever it is, but I think there are certain things and behaviors that you're engaged in where you are moving through your career faster than I moved in, at least. And there are certain things, I don't know, it's to do with the curiosity, or like this thing hasn't worked. I think this is maybe another area that is good, is that one thing I found about you is that you are constantly looking for feedback. You often ask me like, okay, we did this, like, so what's your feedback? And, to be frank, like at your age, I didn't want to hear feedback, right? I mean, I was a bit too arrogant and a bit too insecure. And it's like it was, there is no way that I want to hear about someone's feedback and so that they can tell me that you went wrong there or something. And I think maybe that's allowing you to move faster in your career, and in your kind of the I guess the body of knowledge that you have. And this is something that we are finding now, is how important that is. Like, we are helping build careers of many people in our company, and we are finding how important that feedback is, and trying to kind of establish that almost as a skill and a habit amongst people and ourselves. But this is definitely not what, like, I can speak for myself. I didn't have that like 10 years ago.
No, me neither. I would not be open, not open to listen to feedback, but I would not be proactively seeking feedback. Right, so that is for sure. Maybe we should have another chat about feedback later on. So we've been going for an hour, so it's probably time to start wrapping up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think we have 3 spin-offs already. Feedback. What was the other one?
Mastery and
craftsmanship.
Yeah.
Cool. Plenty to talk about.
Excellent. Cool. Thank you very much, and we'll do another one for sure.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, take care.
Cheers. Bye.